Hi everybody, it's Angelia. Welcome back to Read and Reread. Today we have Friday reads. It is Friday, September the 9th. And so this week I want to talk about two books that I finished. One of which is really gonna stick with me forever. And also the continuation of my Shorty September short story project. And yeah, so that's what we're mainly going to talk about today. So first of all, this week in television. So we finished watching Fargo season 4, and we did not like it as much as the previous couple of seasons. It was okay, but it just got a little ridiculous. Some of the more interesting characters were, they didn't get that much screen time, or I don't know. It was okay. So we finished that. We're still watching Reservation Dogs, which continues to be really good. This week's episode was about the character Cheese, and he's one of my favorite characters, so I love this episode. And then we started a show last night, and I can't really comment much about it because we just saw one episode, but it's called Paper Girls, and it is based on a graphic novel, and it appears to be about time travel. It starts in the 80s with four teenage girls that have a paper route, and on the early morning of November 1st, as they are trying to do their route and then kind of help out this one girl who's new, something weird happens. So that's all I can say right now. We'll see where it goes. So that's TV. And then for reading. Okay, so the first book that I read in this past week was just, if you have read The Trees, you know why I don't even know where to start. But I love this book, and I just cannot believe that I had never heard of Percival Everett before this Booker list. And I'm so overjoyed that he has made it onto the short list. And this book basically, okay, so here's the elements that are included in this book: a police procedural, a murder mystery, a social satire, in some places just broadly farcical, a serious commentary and examination of some really dark things about American history, past and present, and the darkest topics, but laugh out loud moments. And somehow this is knitted together to make this absolutely unforgettable American novel. And I just loved this book, The Trees. And I'm going to seek out some of Percival Everett's previous writings. And I love this comment on the back from the Wall Street Journal that says, "God bless Percival Everett, whose dozens of idiosyncratic books demonstrate a majestic indifference to literary trends, the market, or his critics." And I could see that. I don't know. I loved it, and a lot of other people have as well. And this book, I don't know. I feel like I'm tongue-tied trying to talk about it. It was powerful. It was funny. It should win a special prize just for the names that he gave the characters. Basically, it is about a murder occurs in Money, Mississippi, which was the town where Emmett Till was lynched many years ago. And the crime scene is a white man has been murdered in a style that looks like a lynching, with barbed wire around his neck and some other details that I won't get into. They're very gruesome. But anyway, he's been lynched, and then next to his body is another body of a black man who resembles Emmett Till. But that body disappears shortly after the crime. And so these two men from the Mississippi Bureau of Investigation are sent to sort of look into that aspect of it. And the white racist police department does not roll out the red carpet for these black investigators from the city, but here they come anyway, and they know full well what kind of town they're walking into. And then additional murders in the same style begin to occur. And after it moves out of the confines of this little town, they realize something really weird is afoot, and more specialists come in. And now the town is, the more people are coming, and things are happening around the United States, and it just gets real weird real fast. And somewhere in the heart of it all is a woman named Mama Z, who's over 100 years old, who seems to know a lot more about all this than she's letting on. So it's fascinating, it's riveting, it's funny, it's gross, it's sad, it's all the things, and I recommend it most highly, and I would be absolutely thrilled if it wins the Booker Prize. All right, then after that, I picked up one of the library books that I had picked up last week or so, and I did not know. Okay, I had read a previous book by this author, and I just thought, oh, I heard this book was good, and I really didn't know that much about it, and to use a bad pun, I dove right in, and it turned out to be a really depressing book, but it is good. The Swimmers by Julie Otsuka. And I know that I read When the Emperor Was Divine, which was a book she wrote about Japanese Americans in internment camps during World War II. In this book, it starts out being about all of the people who go to this community pool. And her writing style is kind of like in this list-making fashion, where the narration is kind of third-person collective, like we are the swimmers, and she just goes through all these lists about the kinds of people that are there and what they get out of this, their time at the pool, their routines, and then a crack appears in the pool. And then there's a million theories about if the crack is serious or not, or what the crack means. And then more cracks appear, and eventually the pool is closed. And so the cracks, I'm kind of glossing over it quickly, but it's symbolic. And there's a whole long section in the story about and you kind of get the sense that there's symbolism here. And by the end of the book, you kind of know what she's getting at. But one of the swimmers is a woman named Alice, who's in early stages of dementia, but the pool is a place where she knows herself, she is not confused, she's fully in the routine, she's fully engaged. But after the pool closes, she begins to decline more rapidly. And the narration kind of switches over to a second person narration, which is kind of about Alice and her daughter, who strongly seems to resemble Julie Otsuka, because the daughter is someone who has grown up to become a writer and has moved away. They're not close. They haven't spent much time together, and there's regrets, and it's about loss and the process of dementia and losing yourself and going into the assisted living facility and all these things. So that part, it gets into that, and it's tough. And I think that this book is going to appeal to people that are of a certain age, like mature adults, and all of us, I think, are at high risk of being triggered by this material, because you get to a certain point in life and you probably do know somebody in your family that is in this position, and it kind of, it digs at you. So after I read it, I did look up, and I found an interview between Julie Otsuka and Terry Gross on Fresh Air, which I love Fresh Air. But I read the transcript of this interview because I thought, surely this has autobiographical elements. And indeed it did. And it was inspired by her mother's illness, which was not Alzheimer's. It was a kind of a rare condition that caused frontal lobe disintegration. And so that did, play into why she chose to write this book. But it is, so that's my warning to you. If this is not a topic that you want to read a fiction book about right now, you might want to skip by it. But it is quite good. But whatever you do, don't forget to read the trees. All right, so those are the novels that I read this week. I just started, and you know what? I think it's in the other room, but I just started reading Mercy Street by Jennifer Haigh. So I will talk about that next week. So I haven't gotten very far yet, but I know I'm going to like it because I've read all the books by that author, and also my friend Stacy said it was good. So therefore, I will report back on that next Friday. Okay, so the other thing I did this week was I read one short story every day, and some days I actually read more than one short story because when I was going back with books and authors that I hadn't read in a long time, I got sidetracked sometimes and I had to read, I kind of ended up reading more because I was like, oh, or I couldn't decide which story I wanted to focus on. But anyway, I had a good time this week, and let's see, I wrote them down so I remember what I actually read. So let's see, the first 2 days of the month were actually in last week's report. So we will start with number 3, which was The Cask of Amontillado by Edgar Allan Poe. So I wanted to include this classic, and I picked out a story by Poe that I had not previously read, but was one of his famous stories. And The Cask of Amontillado is online. A lot of these stories, you can find the text of them online if you don't want to have to hunt them down at the library or purchase them. So I did have this anthologized in a couple of books that I have, but I found it online as well because I've been posting the stories each day on my personal Facebook page. So I found that to put there. But the Cask of Amontillado is a very short story about two men, one of whom feels that he has been greatly insulted by the other and wants to get revenge. And he says in the offset that he knows that he's going to pursue his revenge when the time is right, and then he just goes on being friendly with this person. He does not tell us what the insults were. So we don't know the level of this. And that might help us know just exactly how crazy this narrator is, but he does appear to be pretty crazy. So he picks his time during a carnival, and when everybody is partying and his staff is out partying, so they don't know what he's doing, and he tells the friend about this Amontillado, which apparently is this really special kind of wine, a type of sherry that he thinks that he has found one, and he knows this will play to the man's vanity, that he'll say, oh, I want to see it, and he goes, oh no, I know you're busy, I'll just go ask, and he names this other guy, and he's like, no, he won't know anything, I want to see the wine. So he leads him down into some really creepy catacombs underneath his castle. That's all I'm going to tell you about that. But it is your classic bizarre Edgar Allan Poe story. Then I read Everyday Use by Alice Walker, and that also is highly anthologized. I happen to read the one that is in this book, Homecoming, The Southern Family in Short Fiction. And this is a book that I've had for a long time. This anthology came out in 1990, and it has a lot of good stories in it. But, that's kind of the cutoff. It's not anything newer than 1990 in here. But Everyday Use is a really beautifully captured short story by Alice Walker that was written in the 70s, and it is about a homecoming of a young woman who has left her rural family, and now she's coming back. She's bringing with her this man who may or may not be her husband, and this is in just a few pages and narrated by her mother. You get the whole picture of someone who always wanted to escape, thought that where she lived was just not enough, and just the family got behind her, and the church raised money, sent her to college, and then she comes back all full of herself with a new name, because she says, she's cast off the name that has, comes from the years of oppression. And her mother's like, no, that was your aunt's name. What are you, what's going on? And all of a sudden, all the things that she disdained are now like cool cultural artifacts. And she wants to, loot stuff from around the house and everything. So it's just like a really perfect little piece of life by Alice Walker. And it was written about 10 years before she wrote The Color Purple. But it's a great story if you've never read it. Then I read one of my favorite Raymond Carver stories, and it's actually a lot of people's favorite Raymond Carver story as well, but I don't care. It's just really good. So I'm not trying to be super creative here, but I read What We Talk About When We Talk About Love, and it is in this book of mine, but it again is greatly anthologized and online. And it is a story about two couples sitting around day drinking a whole lot of gin and musing on the nature of love, and mainly about one of the women telling about this previous abusive relationship she was in, and everyone arguing about whether or not that was a type of love. And then a couple other people have stories to contribute that they think are examples of true love, and they get progressively more drunk, and there's just sort of an air of despair about the whole thing. So why do I love it? I don't know, but I love Raymond Carver in general, and that is one of my favorite stories. The next one was, I needed to lighten the mood. So the next one was a David Sedaris piece, because I decided that essays or articles also count as Shorty Septembers. So I read one of my favorites from Me Talk Pretty one day, and it's a very, very short story called Big Boy, and this is my level of my sense of humor. The whole story is about when he is at an Easter party, and it's an outdoor party, so everybody's sitting like outside in a yard, and then he goes inside to use the bathroom, and when he goes in, there's a gigantic turd floating in the toilet. And he's just like, oh my gosh, I don't want anyone to think I did this. And he's trying to flush it and it won't go. And there's a window and the people are right outside. And then people are starting to knock and wanting to come in the bathroom. And he's trying to get rid of this big poop so that he doesn't get labeled the pooper that left the poop in the toilet. So that's what the whole thing is about. It is hilarious. It's one of my favorite pieces. It's totally immature, but that's what I like. All right, then we have, this one. Okay, Isabel Huggin wrote this book, The Elizabeth Stories, and she wrote it in, I think, the mid-'80s, and I read it in graduate school. Okay, it's copyright 1984. So when I took this class, that would have been in the very late 80s, 89 or 90ish kind of thing. I remember the professor thought that it was like this up and coming author, this new discovery, and we read it, and I don't even know what the class was, but we read this and talked about it, and I really liked it at the time, and I always kept the book. And so now with this project, I got this back out and looked up Isabel Huggin, and she really only wrote this, she wrote one other short story collection and a memoir, and she is still alive. She's and she has taught at a few different universities, but she did not turn out to be a very prolific writer. But this is a collection of interrelated stories about a girl named Elizabeth from the time she's 7 to her senior year of high school. And she is sort of unflinching at presenting, the more negative aspects of Elizabeth, and a lot of stories about kind of the disjuncture between what she was thinking or trying to do and then the way she was perceived. She has kind of strict, almost puritanical parents. It's a very conservative little town that she lives in Canada. And the story that I read several of them because I started to remember this book, But the one called Secrets was my favorite one, where she's thinking about kind of the world of women and her mother and the secrets that are kept between women, away from their husbands, or even within themselves. And she discovers a particular secret of her mother's. And it is a good story. I don't know if that's online or not. I did not try to link that one. The next one, this one, I took a recommendation. I asked Stephen for a favorite short story, and he suggested Signs and Symbols by Vladimir I always mess up his name, Nabakov. Okay. Anyway, yeah, maybe. But Signs and Symbols. And this is funny because he remembers telling me that he really liked this story, and that Dan Sean, who's one of our favorite authors, said it was his favorite story. I don't remember him mentioning Dan Sean. And then when I read the story, though, I thought, boy, this makes me think about Dan Sean. I bet he read this story. So I don't know if that was like planted in my brain. But anyway, it is and it was published in the New Yorker. It was written in 1947. And for some reason, the New Yorker published it as Symbols and Signs. So you will see it referred to both ways if you look it up. But it is a short story that is very sad and depressing about a couple going to visit their son who is institutionalized with a mental health condition on his birthday. And then it gets into what is happening all the time in the son's mind. And when they go, they're not able to see him that day, and they go back to their apartment, and they're looking at some pictures and things. But I don't want to tell the whole thing, but it's basically about a couple's sad attempted visit to see this son who is extremely mentally ill. And then that's it. Those are the ones. I didn't read today's story yet, but I picked it out, and I got a copy of this new book. This book was just published this week, and I was all surprised because I read a good review, and then I saw it at this low price, and I was like, what? But it's because they sold me an advanced reader's copy, that clearly says not for sale. But it's not the first time this has happened. Anyway, so that's what this is. But it's If I Survive You by Jonathan Escoffery. And he has written a book of interrelated stories about a character named Trelawney, who is the member of a family that immigrates to the U.S. from Jamaica? Yes, a Jamaican family that immigrates to Miami. And I'm going to just begin, since I have not read any of them, I'm going to start with the first story, which is called In Flux. Since it's interconnected stories, I figure there's going to be a value to reading them in order. And I will read the first one for the purposes of Shorty September, but I am going to come back to read the rest because they sound really good. And guess who gives them a blurb on the back? Our good friend, Percival Everett. So it is bound to be good. And I'm trying to, in this survey of Shorty September, one thing I'm kind of looking at is, since a lot of the stories are American stories, I want them to be representative of different aspects of American life. So I'm excited that this is about an immigrant family from Jamaica. And it says it is an electrifying, enthralling debut about identity and belonging. So, sounds good to me. All right, so that is the wrap up of this week's reading. It was a really fun week in reading. The major highlight was the trees, and also just having fun going back through a lot of short stories that I either have never read or haven't read in a long time. So I'm having fun with that. And that will continue in the week to come. We're going on a little road trip to visit our daughter for her birthday at college. So I'm not going to do a video on Tuesday, but I'll be back next week with Friday Reads with my report on the Jennifer Haigh book and whatever I pick out to be you know, my hotel reading and so on past that, and the week of short stories. So let me know if you know a short story that I should definitely not miss for this month. Please let me know in the comments, or anything else that you want to tell me in the comments. And thank you so much. I hope you have a wonderful weekend with all kinds of great reading. And that'll wrap it up for now. Have a great day. Bye bye.